Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back to our channel. My name is Beck. I am a professional mindset coach, a medical doctor, and the founder of the group coaching program Dare Darling. Dare Darling is a space for successful women who underestimate themselves, and they do so often without their awareness through patterns like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. Coaching is a way to translate what you think you already know, what you intellectually know, into your actual behavior so that these changes can affect your results. So as many books as you manage to read about all these patterns that you shouldn't be falling for and how you recognize you self-sabotage yourself in so many ways, we actually take that knowledge and we translate it into your day-to-day life by teaching you mind management skills. These include, but are not limited to, things like mindfulness. And as much as you might lay down and close your eyes to practice mindfulness as a meditation practice, mindfulness in its fullest expression can also show up in your day-to-day life, recognizing with coaching that the way that you're thinking in the moment affects how you feel and how you behave, including the decisions you make and the way that you show up to create your results. So this is what we do in coaching. We take all these micro skills and we actually help them translate into your day-to-day life. If you're suspicious that perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing are ruining your life and stealing your results, then come and join us in the group coaching program, Dare Darling. I can't wait to see you inside. Today's video is going to be a quick one. I'm going to give you 3 practical tips that you probably haven't heard before about how to show up confidently and perform well in public speaking events. Now this might be anything from literally in the typical sense standing up on a stage and giving a talk to a crowd, or it might come up for you in terms of showing up to your exams. As doctors, most of us understand that our clinical exams largely come down to more of our performance rather than our intellectual knowledge. So if you've got a clinical exam coming up, if you've got a speaking event, or if you just want to become a more confident speaker in your life for whatever reason, then stick around for this video. These tips have changed my game and I'm hoping they'll do the same for you. The first tip is something that you probably really don't want to do. It's probably going to make you feel worst at first, but stay with me. What I'd like for you to do is to write down all the things that you're worried that this crowd, this audience, this group, this assessor are going to think about you. I'm talking about the worst things, the things that make you shake in your boots, the things that make you think partway through the talk that something's going wrong, the things that would start to shake up your nervous system and put you into fight or flight. Why would I ask you to bring these to the front of your mind now, especially before it's even happened, especially when they might not even be thinking that, right? The reason I want you to bring it up in advance, to anticipate these thoughts, to expect these thoughts, is because if one of these thoughts comes up for the first time in your mind by surprise during your performance, if it's something that you're truly worried about, it can completely derail you. It can drop all of your confidence from 100 to 0, and you know you need that confidence to show your competence when it comes to a performance. So as much as this might sound like the last thing that you want to do, as much as this might sound like something that might take you a few steps backwards, if you can bring these thoughts up in your mind in advance, then you can also decide what you want to do with them if they come up during your talk. This is as opposed to what we would usually do when a terrifying thought comes up in the middle of a high stress, high stakes situation. And that is believe the thought, and worse, obey it. Act as if it's true. When you have the skills of mind management and you can recognize that these thoughts aren't necessarily truth just because they've arisen in your mind, then you can respond to them in different ways that's more useful. So one obvious way is bringing up the thought and asking, is it true? But the trouble is, in this case, you're likely never going to be able to get that answer. You're never really going to know what somebody else receiving your performance is thinking. And probably the assessors have been trained to not give anything away on purpose. So something we reach for more often in mind management is it useful? So when you bring these thoughts up first in advance of your performance, and you recognize how those thoughts, those stressful thoughts about what they think about you, affects your emotions, which then affects your behaviors, Then you can make a decision about whether you want to keep entertaining this thought, keep this thought in your focus, or move on, redirect to something else. And I'll give you a really simple example. When I was rehearsing one of my talks to somebody who I'd specifically asked for negative feedback from, I noticed their eyes flick down. And as their eyes flicked down, the thought came into my mind, I'm boring them. Now, when I recognized that thought, I could also feel that that was a very familiar thought to me. I think that comes up for me a lot, that I'm worried that I'm boring people. But the problem was, and the self-awareness that I got from that, was when I had the thought, I'm boring them, I felt defeated. And then how did I perform from that point? I was way less engaging. I was way less likely to be interesting and actually connect with these people. I was way more likely to bore them. If I was too worried about my performance and how I was showing up and boring them, I was ironically more likely to bore them. So you can see that this thought for me, in this case, wasn't useful. So my plan from here was, when that thought came up in my actual talk, in my actual performance, I was prepared for that with a decision about what I wanted to think instead. And that was simply just connect with them. That made me feel focused, and that made me behave in a more engaged way with my audience. So that is the reason for trying to bring up your thoughts in advance, even the ones that make you feel ick. Bring them up so you can make a decision about a more useful thought in advance. Tip number 2 is practice feeling the uncomfortable emotions. Now again, so many of you guys might be taking the just stay positive approach, where you just want to plan to show up confidently and feel good and excited and passionate throughout the whole talk, or when you're doing an exam, just focused on showing up confidently and certain and sure and professionally. But when it comes to these situations, I want you to count on or anticipate that you're probably going to feel negative at some point. Now, the more uncomfortable you are with negative emotions, uncomfortable emotions, the more likely you are to behave, to react in a way to try and make them go away. The more likely you are to panic about the fact that they're in your body. The more likely you are to panic about the panic you feel. And then you end up in this downward spiral. So I challenge you to practice feeling uncomfortable emotions, just one or two of the ones that you anticipate coming up, to sit with them for 30 seconds, for a minute, specifically with the goal of stopping that panic spiral. Then, once you've gotten past the point of stopping the spiral, now sitting with that negative emotion in your body, you can reappraise it. So in practical terms, what this looks like when you're performing is noticing that you're feeling vulnerable, for example. And then with that vulnerability, if the situation is that you feel vulnerable, then to think about the vulnerability not as a problem, but to think about the vulnerability as something that you are completely safe and capable of feeling. Something that can be here in your body, but it doesn't need to drive your behaviors. You can feel vulnerable in the moment, and this will pass, and you can continue to perform as per your prefrontal cortex, as per how you actually want to and decide to perform. You don't need to make the vulnerability go away to be okay. Now, this is not an intellectual exercise. This is an emotional exercise. This is about getting into your body and actually feeling the emotions. This is not supposed to feel good. If it feels good, you're doing it wrong. It's supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable, but then we take the edge off by not adding the extra layers of panic. My final tip is to not focus on your performance, to not focus on yourself, to not focus on what is happening with you during the performance. But if ever things are feeling hard, I want you to focus on the audience. Focus on your service. It is so much easier to navigate your thoughts when you're not trying to deal with all of the criticisms and the doubts that come up in your mind. That's a very difficult problem to solve on stage or in front of your assessors in real time. Yes, they're really important things to go and take and look at later, and to be able to ideally prepare for before this performance. But in the moment, when it comes down to it, I want you thinking less and less about yourself and more about the service. Whether you're speaking on a stage and you're thinking about, how am I going to serve these people? How am I showing up to contribute to them? How can I give to them? How can I focus more on them? How can I connect more with them? Or if you're in an exam situation and you're focusing on the actual task at hand, the actual patient you have with you, how am I going to do this task better? How am I going to treat this patient better? As opposed to taking things personally, as opposed to making things about you. It is a very natural, human, normal thing, and it's a good safety mechanism of our brain to turn the finger around and say, what's going wrong with you? Can you improve something? Should you change something? But it's very easy to spiral when the spotlight is on us. It's a lot easier to answer those questions, what should I do next, when you're really focused on the service. All right, my beautiful friends, these are just a couple of tips and tricks that can help you show up and perform in the way that you want to, and they all come from these foundations of mindset coaching. We use your thoughts and emotions. We appreciate how your thoughts and emotions affect your behaviors, so we use them to change your behaviors. Instead of just telling you what to do or taking a accountability and just do it approach, we change the way that you show up fundamentally by changing the drivers of your behavior. And this is why we get results that are not only effective in one situation, but results that infiltrate the rest of your life. It is the most delightful side effect. If you found this video useful, then you probably should be in our group coaching program, Dear Darling. The link is down below. I cannot wait to meet you, and I can't wait to see what you contribute for us. Until next time, thank you so much for supporting this channel, and I'll see you in my next one.